In the last 100 years, over 50 ships and 20 aircraft have disappeared in a stretch of ocean between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. No wreckage, no bodies, no explanation. It has no official borders. No government recognizes it on any map. And yet sailors and pilots have feared it for over a century. Tonight, we don't talk about the legend. We talk about the cases. The specific, documented, terrifying cases that no one has ever fully explained. 3 cases, 3 mysteries, 0 answers. This is the Bermuda Triangle Files. Before we get into the cases, you need to understand what we're dealing with. The Bermuda Triangle, sometimes called the Devil's Triangle, covers roughly 500,000 square miles of the North Atlantic Ocean. That's an area larger than the entire state of California. It sits between 3 points: Miami, Florida to the west, the island of Bermuda to the north, and San Juan, Puerto Rico to the south. The name Bermuda Triangle was actually coined by a writer named Vincent Gaddis in a 1964 magazine article. But sailors and ship captains had been reporting strange things in this region for centuries before anyone gave it a name. Christopher Columbus himself wrote in his ship's log about strange lights and compass malfunctions in this very area during his 1492 voyage to the New World. What makes the Bermuda Triangle particularly unsettling is not just the number of disappearances, it's the nature of them. Ships and planes don't just sink or crash, they vanish completely. Sometimes in clear weather, with no distress signal, no debris field, no oil slick, no bodies. It's as if they were simply erased. There's also a geographic quirk. The Bermuda Triangle is one of only 2 places on Earth where true north and magnetic north align perfectly, meaning a compass shows no declination. This sounds harmless, but in the early days of navigation, sailors who failed to account for this discrepancy could find themselves sailing miles off course and miles closer to disaster. Now, let's talk about the cases. And we're going to do this differently. No vague statistics, no unnamed ships. We're going case by case, victim by victim, detail by detail, starting with the most famous disappearance in the history of aviation, the one that shocked an entire nation and that the U.S. Navy still cannot fully explain. Case 1, Flight 19, the Lost Squadron, December 5th, 1945. Naval Air Station, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. 5 torpedo bombers take off on a routine training exercise. None of them ever come back. This is the story of Flight 19. The mission was called Navigation Problem Number 1, a standard triangular training flight. 14 men across 5 aircraft. Their leader was Lieutenant Charles Taylor, a decorated combat veteran with over 2,500 hours of flight time. The planes were TBF Avenger torpedo bombers, reliable battle-tested aircraft. Weather conditions were clear. The sea state was calm. Nothing about this day should have been remarkable. The flight plan was simple. Take off from Fort Lauderdale, fly 160 miles east to the Bahamas, drop practice bombs, then turn north for 40 miles before heading southwest back to base. Total time, about 2 hours. They had fuel for 6. What could possibly go wrong? At 3:40 p.m., just 2 hours into the flight, Lieutenant Taylor made an unexpected radio call to Fort Lauderdale Tower. His message: "We seem to be off course. Both of my compasses are out, and I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale. I'm over broken land, but I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down the Keys I am." The tower operator tried to guide him, but something was already going very wrong. What followed was one of the most chilling radio conversations in aviation history. Taylor became increasingly disoriented. He believed the group was over the Gulf of Mexico. He ordered them to fly east to reach the coast, but other pilots disagreed. One was heard saying, "I don't know where we are. We must have got lost after that last turn." Another pilot, and possibly student officer Edward Powers, was heard transmitting, "If we could just fly west, we would get home." But Taylor overruled them. By 5:15 p.m., the sun had set. Darkness was closing in. Weather was deteriorating. Winds picking up, seas growing rough. And Taylor made the fateful decision that would seal their fate. He told the group to fly northeast, He was convinced this would take them back to land. In reality, he was pointing them deeper into the open Atlantic. With each passing mile, their fuel was running out. At 6 p.m., Taylor's last clear transmission was received. All planes close up tight. We will have to ditch unless landfall is made. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together. After that, silence. A final partial transmission was picked up by another station at 7:04 p.m., but it was too faint and broken to understand. Flight 19 was never heard from again. Here's where the story gets even darker. The Navy immediately launched a search and rescue mission. Among the aircraft sent was a PBM Mariner flying boat, a large, experienced search plane with a crew of 13. It took off at 7:27 p.m. At 7:50 p.m., a passing merchant ship reported seeing an explosion in the sky. The Mariner was never seen again. In a single evening, the Bermuda Triangle had swallowed 6 aircraft and 27 men. The Navy launched the largest search in its history at that time. Over 300 aircraft, dozens of ships. They searched hundreds of thousands of square miles of ocean. They found nothing. Not a life raft, not an oil slick, not a seat cushion, not a single body. The official Navy report concluded with a phrase that has haunted aviation history ever since. They disappeared as completely as if they had flown to Mars. Explanations have ranged from Taylor's disorientation to sudden squalls to fuel exhaustion, but none of them fully account for why 14 men and then 13 more on the rescue plane left no trace whatsoever. The sea conditions, while rough, were not extreme. The aircraft were flight-worthy. To this day, the wreckage of Flight 19 has never been found. The case remains officially open. Case 2, the USS CYCLOPS, the Navy's greatest mystery, March 1918, the middle of World War I, a United States Navy ship carrying 309 men and a full load of cargo steams into the Bermuda Triangle. It never arrives at its destination. No distress signal, no wreckage, no explanation. To this day, it remains the single largest loss of life in U.S. naval history, not directly caused by combat. The USS CYCLOPS was a Navy collier, a cargo ship designed to carry coal and fuel to other vessels. She was 542 feet long, one of the largest ships in the Navy fleet. By March 1918, she had already made dozens of safe voyages. Her commanding officer was Lieutenant Commander George Worley, a veteran sailor known for his eccentric behavior. Survivors of earlier voyages later said Worley was erratic, possibly alcoholic, and had a habit of wandering the deck in his underwear and a derby hat while carrying a cane. Not exactly a reassuring commander. In February 1918, the Cyclops set out from Norfolk, Virginia, heading south toward Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, to pick up a cargo of manganese ore, a heavy industrial mineral used in munitions manufacturing. She made a scheduled stop in Barbados on March 3rd. That was the last time anyone saw the USS Cyclops, her crew, or her 309 men alive. The ship departed Barbados on March 4th, 1918. She was headed for Baltimore. She never arrived. By late March, the Navy realized something was wrong. Search parties were dispatched. Every possible port was checked. Inquiries were sent to foreign governments. Nothing. No ship. No wreckage. No bodies. Not a single piece of debris was ever found in any ocean anywhere in the world. One of the Navy's largest vessels had simply ceased to exist. The theories came quickly. German submarines? Possible. It was wartime. But no German records have ever confirmed an attack on the Cyclops, and German naval archives were captured after the war. A structural failure? The ship had a known problem. One of her engines had been malfunctioning since South America, and she was carrying a notoriously unstable cargo. Manganese ore is extremely heavy and can shift suddenly in rough seas. A rapid list and capsize could happen in minutes. But there's a darker theory. Commander Worley had a suspicious background. He was born in Germany and originally sailed under the name Johann Friedrich Wichmann. In 1918, anti-German sentiment in America was at a fever pitch. Some theorized that Worley had defected, sailing the Cyclops and his 309 men to a German port. But this theory falls apart immediately. No evidence of the ship, its cargo, or its men ever appeared in any German record. And the ocean doesn't lie that quietly for decades. This case was so significant, even President Woodrow Wilson commented on it publicly. He said, "Only God and the sea know what happened to the great ship." That statement tells you something. When the President of the United States during a world war is left with no better explanation than divine mystery, the mystery is real. More than 100 years later, the USS CYCLOPS has never been found. No wreckage, no remains. 309 men, gone. It remains the single greatest unsolved maritime mystery in American history. The Naval History and Heritage Command still lists the cause of her loss as unknown. Case 3. The Ellen Austin, the ghost ship and the crew that wouldn't stay. 1881. A British merchant vessel named the Ellen Austin is sailing through the Bermuda Triangle when its crew spots something extraordinary. A large, fully rigged schooner drifting silently in the water, with no one on board. What happened next has been called one of the most disturbing nautical incidents in history. When the Ellen Austin crew boarded the drifting schooner, they found it fully stocked with food, water, cargo, and supplies. The rigging was intact. The sails were set. There was no sign of struggle, no blood, no indication of fire or flooding. Everything was in order, except there was not a single person on board. No crew, no captain, no note. The ship's log was missing. It was as if every soul aboard had simply stepped off the edge of the world. The captain of the Ellen Austin, a man named Baker, made the practical decision that sea captains have made for centuries. Claim the ship as salvage. He placed a prize crew of several of his most experienced men aboard the derelict vessel. The plan was simple. Sail the two ships together to New York, where the salvage would be sold. The prize crew boarded the abandoned ship. The two vessels set off together side by side. Then, a storm came. Overnight, a fierce squall separated the two ships. When the storm cleared and the Ellen Austin's crew searched for their sister vessel, they found her again, still drifting. But when they boarded the derelict ship to check on the prize crew, they were gone. Every single one of them vanished. The food they had brought aboard was still there. Their personal effects were still there. But the men, gone. No bodies in the water. Nothing. What Captain Baker did next is perhaps the most astonishing part of this story. He put another prize crew aboard the derelict ship. Despite what had just happened, despite the fact that his first crew had just vanished without explanation, he found volunteers willing to sail the mystery vessel. Or perhaps they weren't entirely volunteers. Perhaps Baker ordered them. We don't know. What we do know is that the two ships set off together again. Another storm. The ships were separated again. And when the weather cleared, the derelict was gone. Completely. Not drifting somewhere nearby. Gone. Along with the second prize crew. Captain Baker searched the area and found nothing. He arrived in New York, filed his report, and the story slipped into the quiet archives of maritime history. The identity of the derelict ship was never established. The fate of its original crew was never discovered. And the fate of the two prize crews Baker placed aboard, never explained. Skeptics have questioned the Ellen Austin story. Some historians have been unable to find the original newspaper account that first reported it, and details have shifted over decades of retelling. But the Lloyd's of London Shipping Registry does record the Ellen Austin as a real vessel, an American merchant brigantine, built in Maine in 1854. Whether the details of her encounter have been embellished or not, the story has endured for over 140 years for a reason. Because out there on that ocean, something happened that no one could explain. So what could possibly explain all of this? Scientists have proposed several natural explanations for Bermuda Triangle disappearances. One of the most compelling is methane hydrate eruptions. The ocean floor beneath the triangle contains enormous deposits of frozen methane. If a large bubble of methane were released suddenly, it could dramatically reduce water density, causing a ship to sink almost instantly, with no warning and no wreckage floating to the surface. Some researchers believe the same methane clouds could interfere with aircraft engines if they entered the gas plume. Rogue waves, massive walls of water up to 100 feet high that appear suddenly without warning, were considered myth until satellite data confirmed them in the late 1990s. The Bermuda Triangle region, where the Gulf Stream, Atlantic currents, and storm systems converge, is prime rogue wave territory. A rogue wave could sink a large vessel in seconds, leaving little debris. The skeptical explanation, championed by researchers like Lawrence David Kusha, is that there's no mystery at all. The Triangle is one of the most heavily traveled shipping and flight corridors in the world. More traffic means more accidents. Many disappearances occurred during storms that weren't fully documented. Some ships listed as lost in the Triangle actually went down hundreds of miles away. In other words, the mystery may partly be a product of imprecise record-keeping and the natural human desire to find patterns in chaos. But here's the problem with the no mystery here explanation. Even after you remove the poorly documented cases, even after you account for storms and human error, a handful of cases remain that defy rational explanation. Flight 19 left no wreckage. The USS CYCLOPS left no wreckage. These are not obscure anecdotes. They are well-documented official government cases that remain open to this day. The dismissal of the mystery doesn't make these cases go away. The honest answer, the one that scientists, historians, and investigators actually give when pressed, is this: we don't know. The ocean is incomprehensibly large and incomprehensibly deep. Ships and planes that sink in deep water can disappear without a trace. The Bermuda Triangle may have no supernatural explanation, but it has no complete natural one either. And in that space between what we know and what we don't, that is where the fear lives. We have mapped the surface of the moon. We have sent probes to the edge of the solar system. We have sequenced the human genome. And yet, right here, right now, in a stretch of ocean barely 2 hours from the coast of Florida, there are ships and planes and men at the bottom of the sea that we have never found. Families who never got answers. Cases that remain open. The ocean keeps its secrets better than we keep ours. 3 cases, Flight 19, 14 men, 5 planes, 1 rescue plane, 13 more men, gone without a trace. The USS CYCLOPS, 309 men, one of the Navy's largest ships, gone without a trace. The Ellen Austin, an abandoned ship and 2 prize crews placed aboard her, gone without a trace. These are not myths. These are not legends. These are documented incidents, filed in official records, that remain unsolved to this day. What happened out there? Maybe we'll find out someday. Maybe a salvage team will pull wreckage from the ocean floor that finally answers the question. Or maybe the Bermuda Triangle will keep its secrets the way it always has, silently, completely, and without apology. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay away from the Triangle.